Welcome to Recovery Equity, a series of conversations about promising initiatives and new possibilities to reach and to help more people faced with addiction. My name is Lucretia Dotson, a supervisor for administrative services at the Hazleton Betty Ford National Center for Youth and Families. Today, we are speaking with Juanita, who has graciously agreed to share her recovery story. How are you today, Juanita?
I am doing well, and how are you?
I am well. I am so looking forward to talking to you again. So, why don't you briefly tell us who you were before recovery?
Okay. Before recovery, I was a divorced mom with one child. I worked at a hospital and was there to the hospital until my addiction caused me not to even go to work anymore. And I lost my son at 12. In other words, he went to live with his father and his grandmother because my addiction had caused me to lose the house, to not be able to put food on the table, because all I did was live to use and use to live. So for me, after my son was with his father full time, I began my addiction full force. I lied, I stole, I cheated, I prostituted, I lived in abandoned buildings. I did anything that I could do to just get one more. I stayed with my mom, and she was my best victim because I knew she wouldn't beat me up, but I stole left and right. And I continued on this pattern until I had another child. I got pregnant, and everyone around me just assumed. They had took me to mental institutions. They had took me to different doctors. But the problem was no one wanted to say that I was a drug addict. All they would say is she got some problems. And so when the professionals would say, okay, what's wrong with you? I would just say, what did my family say? Did they say I had some problems? Because I don't have any, And so, of course, I was always released. And so I had my daughter, and everyone just assumed because, you stop momentarily because you have another life in you, that means your addiction is completed. On the contrary, I am one who believes that if you don't seek out help, your addiction stops for a moment and then it goes right back. They would put me in jail. I would stop for a moment, it go right back. So after having my daughter, again, my addiction progressed to the point that I was now eating out of garbage cans, begging for some money. I was living in abandoned buildings. So basically, uh, one day I called a particular relative and I said, I need to come by to get some money. But this relative knew me very well and started asking me questions like why I didn't have my son, why I wasn't with my daughter. And so by this time, my housing was underneath the railroad tracks. So she could hear the train keep going back and forth. And then she said to me, what is wrong with you? And so I said, nothing, nothing. Are you going to give me some money? I can make it over to your house. And she said, no, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to bury you like I buried your daddy. And it made me cry because I was real close to my father. My father was a person who consumed a whole lot of alcohol. I don't believe in calling other people alcoholics unless they do it themselves. But he consumed a whole lot. And God just spoke to me then to say, I'm on these drugs and I don't know how to get off of it. And for me, any drug was my drug. I didn't have a favorite. I just used anything. And so from that conversation, she was a smart person, and which I didn't know, then worked for the Department of Alcohol and Substance Abuse. And so she took me to the hospital. And when she took me to the hospital, they informed her that I was again pregnant again. And she said, how? This child is 80 pounds. I mean, just look at her. And so they knew then that I needed the hospital, told her where to take me, and she took me to a facility. And she told me, she said, hey, you stay in this facility until that baby's, well, she said, no, you stay into this facility and I'll bring you anything you want. And back then, I smoked cigarettes and I needed clothes. I didn't have anything but what was on my back because all the doors had locked because of my behavior when I was actively using. So, by her taking me to this facility, I started off in detox. I went to a 30-day program. And in that 30-day program, they invented a program for women, and so I progressed and began recovery, and everything was, started my process to the road of recovery.
Oh my. Thank you for sharing. I had one question in there. So much to unpack. And such a survivor you are. I think that it would be really beneficial to other women who find themselves in the unique position of being pregnant when they found out they were addicted, and you were only 80 pounds. And how far along were you at that time?
I was 5 months pregnant at that time.
What amazing. What advice would you have for women that find themselves in that predicament?
To actually to be able to surrender and ask for help. Recovery doesn't work with the I program. It's a we program. And that means we have to reach out for other services. I think that if the services wasn't available at that time, I really couldn't tell you where would I have been, but it was a program for women who were pregnant. And you'd be surprised. I was like the third person out of 30 that could go, but the 30 beds filled it up in less than a week.
Oh my. What was your process to recovery after? So, did you have your third child while you were in a treatment facility?
Yes, you could stay in the facility until the child was born. Once the child was born, you had to have other resources in order to maintain your sobriety on the outside, maintaining your clean time. For me, because I had lied through the program that I had some place to go, they had not arranged for anything for me to go to. So I stayed with a friend of mine until they found me a recovery home to go to. And then I was there with not just the newborn baby, but after 30 days, my toddler came also.
Oh my.
So I stayed in what I call a controlled environment for one complete year of my recovery. So I was 1 year clean before I moved into my own apartment, but I utilized all the tools that were given to me, the counselors, the parenting classes, the meetings. I got a sponsor. I made 90 meetings in 90 days and then another 90 in another 90 days. So I did everything that was suggested. They said if you weren't working, don't get a job until after you had at least a year or a year and a half clean. So I took all of those suggestions and it worked for me. Went back to school and got my degree and worked in the field also, until I retired this past May of 20.
I think that's awesome. Um, how do you maintain your recovery today?
Well, today I have 31 years clean. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor. This past Sunday, I had my sponsee group with my sponsor, and we played bingo, just regular things that people play. But we also talk about current issues, all the new literature that's out. We read it, we discuss it. I write in a journal currently today. Currently, I'm working step 9 for the fifth time. So, in other words, recovery is no in recovery, there is no graduation. There is continuous growth. So the journey continues. I do not disconnect. I sponsor about 20 ladies. So that keeps me even more active because they're going over their work. And we attend recovery meetings on Zoom. So the process has not changed, even though we've had a pandemic in our lives. We have to keep staying with the basics. That's one of my thing. If you forget the basics, then you're going to eventually, not soon, relapse. I have just been afforded to follow directions and follow the guidelines that was given to me early in my recovery by my sponsor, and I have not found the need to stray from that. Death of my son, which was really devastating because he was healthy and 44, but the cancer came. A lot of people was like, "Wait, did you grieve?" Yes, because I understand now that God gives us everyone in our lives for a reason and a season, but we have to stay grounded. So I remember I'm powerless. There's nothing I can do about it. So I turn it over. I just be the best grandmama and mother-in-law to my daughter and my grandchildren. I do those things that was suggested in the basics. I stay connected. I read a lot of material still, even though I'm retired, on recovery, on addiction, on the application, like you was asking about obsession and compulsion, knowing when enough is enough, and knowing, the old fashioned used to say, know when to hold them and know when to fold.
Wonderful with them.
Yeah.
That's a really powerful point that you made in regards to the journey continuing. What would you say is a foundational piece for anyone um, or others that are trying to maintain sobriety?
I would say to anyone that, number one, you have to have a network of recovery people in your lives. It can't just be family all the time because, family can be very cruel and very hard. So I always say you have to use the phone line. It's very important if you don't have the hotline numbers to use the hotline. I remember I had a real bad dream and I called the hotline. And you'd be surprised. The people on the hotline say, "Girl, you got to remember that was a dream. So let's look at what you behaviors that you're doing. You've got to really be into your literature. You can't be I always say you as sick as your secrets. So even when I'm doing something I know I don't have any business doing, there's nothing that I can't tell my husband, who is also a recovery person, my sponsor, my sponsees, my sponsee sisters. I have a community of recovery people around me. Do I have people that still use around me? Far and in between. I can call them on, my 10 fingers. Most of everyone I associate with is in recovery except for some family members. So you've got to change. If nothing changes, nothing changes. If you want your life to be new and now I'm talking to people in California, West Africa, because on Zoom now, it affords us to speak to people that don't even know us. So you don't have to have all of those secrets anymore. Get rid of the secrets, and you will find that your new life begins because each day we wake up, we have a new beginning.
That's true. Um, you said I was going to ask you what your mantra was, but I've heard so many. But what's the thing you tell yourself all the time to keep you grounded in your own recovery?
For me, I use this one. I can't, God can, so let him. For me, I believe
One
that
more time.
I can't, God can, so I let him.
Amen.
And see, for me, I use that one because when things aren't going my way or the way I feel that it should be, it's okay. Because I know that he's going to open another window, another door. He knows that I have to go through whatever situation that happens in my life. He knows about it. So if I allow him, which is in our steps. No matter where you look at, the word God is in everything that we read and we do. If we allow Him to do whatever we think we want to do, allow Him to be the controller of it, then you don't have any problems. So I use the first three steps. I can't, he can, so I let him. That's the best model for me. And just knowing who you are. A lot of people don't want to look at who am I, so then I'm able to tell you, I'm able to look at all those flaws that I have. I'm able to ask God, please help me in my bad things that I do. And then I can make a list of all those people I've harmed, and I can turn around and say, you know what, I'm sorry. But that sorry goes even further because I don't have to do that no more. Then I keep a daily maintenance on Juanita. What is Juanita doing? I keep praying, and then I'm able to share with everybody in the world. It doesn't matter where you come from, who you are. Addiction has no name, it has no color. It tells us anybody can be afflicted with addiction, whether it's eating too much candy down to eating too much or doing too much dope. It doesn't matter. We have to get a grip and understand that we have to look at ourselves for who we are. I don't mind telling anybody that I'm a recovering addict who is truly graced through God.
Thank you, Juanita. I think the things that you've said are very powerful and they need to continue to be heard. So I'm going to thank you again and ask that everyone out there that is joining us to please let your friends and your colleagues know about these conversations and to come back often and to catch the new Recovery Equity episodes. Together, we can build healthier and a happier tomorrow.